had to drive back from Duluth last night. Not great.
Okay, here we go. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Thursday, January 16, 2020 meeting of the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Roll call, please, Ms. Karski.
Commissioner Fisher?
Here.
Commissioner Staunton?
Here.
Commissioner Brindle?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Chair Hovland?
Here. For those of you that care to join the commission of the HRA and saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice.
Liberty and justice for all.
All right. We've got a form of meeting agenda in front of us this morning. Is there any amendment to that agenda? Any changes?
No changes from
All
staff.
Right. Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as shown?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion second to approve the meeting agenda as shown. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Community comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the HRA on a matter of concern to them? Okay, seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there anyone on the HRA who wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? All right. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as shown?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion second to adopt the consent agenda as shown. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting a consent agenda as shown, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And then we are on to reports and recommendations section of the agenda, and that matter that we deal with first there this time of the year is the election of officers. And Manager Neal is going to introduce that topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the HRA is familiar with this action. We need a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary for officers for the HRA for the upcoming year.
All right. And the typical sequence has been?
I think typically
Mayor.
we've proposed them as a slate, I believe, and you've taken one vote on a slate.
All right. So it's typical that the mayor's been the chair, and then we have a vice chair position, and the secretary, Member Fisher, has been the secretary of the HRA. Vice chair, who has that been?
Mary is
Mary?
right now.
Am I?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Good, excellent.
Pays the same. Yeah.
The pay is
Yeah.
the same, I can
Well.
guarantee.
Anyone care to move a slate?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to move the slate as described. The mayor is the chair. Vice chair would be Member Brindle, and the secretary would be Member Fisher. Any further discussion? All those in favor of that slate of officers say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That was a tepid level of enthusiasm all the way around. All the way around, I got to say.
It's cold out.
Okay, we got that done. And then this will ring
I hope
more
this is less tepid,
effectively,
yeah.
I think, when we talk about appointing the executive director of the HRA. I think there'll be a lot of enthusiasm around this one. Manager Neal, do you have anything to say
Will
for
you
yourself?
please appoint me as the executive director of the HRA?
I noticed you kind of tiptoed into that.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second? Get a motion and a second to appoint City Manager Scott Neal as the Executive Director of the HRA. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And then we've got a number of meeting dates set for 2020 and their location. Manager Neal, did you have anything you wanted to say there?
Yes, Mr. Chair. As we have discussed in previous City Council and HRA discussions, we're going to do our very best to make sure that we bulk up our first meeting of the month and have that be our kind of primary meeting so that we can, whenever we can, cancel the second HRA meeting of each month. And in fact, we've been able to do that in January. So the January 30th meeting is not necessary for timeline purposes for projects or policies that we have coming for you. So that meeting will be canceled, and we'll continue to try to replicate that as we go forward in 2020.
Okay. This has caused me to think about all of the, either the setting of meetings or the cancellations of meetings I've been getting from Mary Brindle. I don't know if anybody else gets those too. I mean, it gets so confusing with all those emails that come through from you about setting meetings. I don't know how that happened on your computer, but it is.
It is,
confusing.
It's an annoyance. I met with Katie Bisek about it, and so every once in a while, I usually just enter my HRA meetings manually because the calendar program, the app isn't working for me. And I recently thought I would clean things up a little bit, and of course, the messages went out. I apologize. I have no idea what the problem is, but it's a quirk. Well, I will say the meetings that are in my calendar, the distribution list is quite old. And so, I don't know how that's happening either. So,
How do you end up with a distribution list off of your calendar for the HRA meeting?
yeah, it says invitees, and all the invitees are listed there.
Oh,
So
this
evidently,
conversation.
every time I make a change.
Disinvite us all, would you?
I'm afraid to do
don't do
anything
that,
at
yeah.
this point, so I'm not using it anymore.
Our,
So,
our IT team is aware of this, and they're trying to figure out what the issue is
Yeah.
and fix it.
I'm just praying that no millennials are listening to this morning. So I'm happy to report that I am not on Mary's distribution list because I don't know what any of you are
nor is
talking
Ron,
about.
But Bob Stewart is.
So it is an
I
old
think-
distribution
I think
list.
he's probably getting all my messages.
And Ann Swenson's playing that too, yeah. Confused.
All right.
Yeah, so, but,
I think we should agendize a seminar between the mayor and Commissioner Brindle on IT solutions.
well, it's a quirky app, and so I'm hoping that it gets worked out. But Katie is well aware of it, so.
Then what I end up with on my computer are shadow meetings from you. So I get the main meeting, and then I get in the shadow is your scheduled meeting. So it's
Pretty
interesting.
much every week, every Thursday.
We're working on a
I can't tell when
fix.
we're meeting anymore.
I'm sure it's the technology. We'll get that fixed.
So at the risk of Commissioner Brindle sending out another appointment, I do have to say the first meeting in February, I know for sure I will not be here. So as you're bulking up these meetings, and I'm working on my full schedule for there about 4-month period there where I will be in and out. So
That is true for me as well.
Okay.
All right. We don't have to do anything, no action required on that particular matter, but an explanation of what we decided to do. And I think it was Member Brindle's idea. It was a good idea. All right, on to year in review. And we have, Manager Neal, did you want to, Executive Director
Yes.
Neal, did you want to introduce the topic?
I
Or do you
will.
want to just go right to
Actually,
Mr. Neuendorf?
the bylaws for the HRA require staff to provide a year-end review each year, and that has been the project of one of Mr. Neuendorf's favorite projects, if I could call it a favorite project, yeah, that he does each year, and so he has prepared his annual year-end review for you today.
All right, thank you.
Yes, good morning, thank you. In the agenda packet was the year in review report. It's a multi-page summary of the major projects that the HRA was involved with, or either directly involved with, or just kind of keeping our eyes on in case we needed to get involved. So it covers primarily physical construction projects, but there are some planning and a few policy items in there as well. This morning, to supplement the narrative, I just was going to run through some brief highlights using some images and some summaries. So just not a surprise to anyone, but 2019 continues to be one of those very busy years. Since the Great Recession broke about 8 years ago, Edina has seen just a whole lot of development, as we're all aware of. I do keep track of some of the numbers. We have over 60, or actually exactly 60 major commercial projects. That doesn't include new tenants in one space moving to another, but it's typically major redevelopments. We've delivered over 2,000 new housing units. We're in the process of delivering over 500 new hotel rooms and over 700,000 square feet in new commercial space. Along the way, we lost some old commercial space, some old housing, et cetera. But this is the new items that we've seen in the field. From the city's perspective, we try to keep some account of what level of private investment that is. Our numbers are typically low. They're based on permit fees, which isn't, it's typically not the whole picture of a project, but well over $500 million in private investment. And for the most part, that work has been privately funded. The HRA did get involved in 9 of those projects using tax increment financing. So at the end of 2019, Edina has 9 active TIF districts. This map should look familiar to you. We have 4 housing districts to promote the construction of affordable housing, 3 redevelopment districts, which are to fund larger scale redevelopments, 1 renewal district, which is similar, and then the economic development district at Southdale Mall. Another slide that you've seen before, Edina tries to use TIF to a limited degree. The bar chart on the left of the screen shows Edina's use of TIF in comparison to our neighbors. About 3% of our land area is in a TIF district, and about 3.5% of our tax base is in a TIF district. That falls squarely in the middle when you look at all of the major suburban communities in the Twin Cities. So I just wanted to run through a couple projects. Some of these photos are very recent. You might see some snowflakes from yesterday. Others are from the fall. But one of the projects that the HRA got involved in with the use of tax increment was the Lorient at 4500 France Avenue. These photos are from this week, so they are getting close to topping out that building. They're constructing the top floor along France Avenue. This is a perspective from Sunnyside looking towards the east. So this portion of the building is lower in scale to fit into the neighborhood better, and they are starting to put the roofing on this portion of it. Right in front of the tree, in front of the big concrete mixer, that is where the public plaza will be constructed. Happy to say that we're largely finished with the Nolan Mains and the Market Street redevelopment projects we've been working on for many years. The image on the left is the new north parking ramp. We finished that back in 2018, actually, October of 2018. And in this last year, November of 19, we opened the new center ramp. So as the construction crews dismantle their equipment, move their dumpsters out of there, get the porta potties off the street, we've been taking more efforts to ramp up awareness of both of those parking structures. And especially with the holiday season, we've seen the center parking ramp being used more and more frequently. So it'll take a while for customers to get reacquainted with things, but those projects are largely finished. A few other images of the Nolan Mains or Market Street project. The image on the left is from the post office, from the front door of the post office. So this building, as you recall, is unique in that it doesn't have a back side. All 4 sides of the building are finished fronts. So you'll notice a lot of brickwork, more extensive than any recent project in Edina. And then the glass wall on the street level is for incoming retailers and businesses moving in. So over the next spring, in fact, probably over 2020, We'll see more construction as retailers build out the interiors, but the shell is finished and the building is occupied. To date, to my knowledge, there's 100 units in the building. 53 of those are leased or already have occupants. So it's going very nicely. Here's a few images of some of the public spaces that were recreated. So the image on the left is standing right next to the plaza, next to at-home furnishings. We've reconstructed that public walkway. 3 years ago, the image on the left would have been the back side of the parking structure, 2 birch trees and the back side of the concrete. Now we've got retail space and a plaza and a finished building above it. On the right side, that's looking towards the west, towards Crispin Green and Talbot's. Similar situation there. We've rebuilt the public walkway. And where the building on the right is, that used to be the back side of the old parking ramp. This image is of the new public plaza. So this used to be where the steps came out of the old parking structure, and it went up 3 stories. So now we've got about a 5,000 square foot public space. The structure in the very front is a fireplace. There's a little push button dial to turn the gas on, and then it shuts off automatically for safety. Right in the center of the space is a ramp to go up the elevation. There's about a 4-foot drop off in the grade in this part of Edina. So there's a ramp there, and then a water feature is right next to the ramp. So we'll turn the water on in the springtime. But we've already had a couple events in the plaza. We had 3 winter markets that for first-time events were pretty well attended. They were focused more on families, hot cocoa bars, s'more bars, write your letters to Santa kinds of things, ice sculptures, music. But the businesses were excited to get activity back there again.
How are they doing on the completion on the east building?
They have a temporary certificate of occupancy, and people are moving in. So they're still doing work on the interior commercial space. That's kind of a staging area. But they're turning units over. They had a handful of move-ins last weekend as well. So the scaffolding is gone. So every day has been a little bit different as they finish more things up. But the east building is finished and being occupied.
Are the affordable housing units all in the east building?
Nope, they're scattered throughout the site. So there's 10 affordably priced homes in this building. There's 8 one-bedrooms that are in the west buildings and 2 two-bedrooms that are in the east building. We had a chance to tour through them a week or 2 ago, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that the same high-end level of finish that's in the market rate apartments is also in the affordably priced units. The 2-bedroom units in particular are very nice. They're just like the market rate. They have a balcony. They've got 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. They have access to all the same amenities. So they're very nice units. They also have 2 handicap accessible units that are affordably priced.
It's quite a remarkable project when you tour it and you see the common spaces and the thought that was given to everything, and then the design of the individual units and the level of finish, as you say. It's really something those developers ought to be proud of in our town as well. I think it's
definitely something to be proud of, and something we'll celebrate. We're in the midst of planning a ribbon cutting and grand opening. We'll wait till spring when the weather turns. They're also working with a food operator to move in on the first floor, so we'll wait until they're finished. They're currently building out that space, so we'll wait until they're finished and have a celebration and look at all the good work that we finished and see it without piles of snow and ice out there.
I was thinking that now that we're in winter that people would discover more quickly the underground heated public parking, but that's going a little bit slower than I thought. It
takes time for people to adjust their habits. So in December, we started reminding the merchants on a weekly basis that space is open and available, and encouraging them to remind their customers or their clients that they can park indoors, underground, go up the elevator or walk up a stairway and end up 20 feet from their favorite merchant or their favorite destination. But it takes time for that to become a habit. One other project that's largely that's finishing in 2019 and will actually be occupied in 20 is the Edina Flats. This is property at Valley View Road in Kellogg. The corner parcels were owned by the Edina HRA. It used to be an old U-Haul gas station. There was some contamination, soil contamination from the tanks many years ago. So this is a parcel that the HRA purchased in hopes of getting something better on that corner. It took a long time, but there's 15 condominiums that are being built. I spoke with the developer. 9 of those 15 are already reserved for purchase. They're working on the final finishes, and they're expecting the first round of sales to close in February. So there's several buildings, 3 stories on the corner. The comp plan was agreeable to 3 stories, and the neighbors were agreeable to 3 stories on the Valley View corner. And then as you get more into the residential neighborhood, it goes down to 2 stories. And then switching gears from that scale to the Southdale, it's quite a celebration to see a lot of the new investments at the mall itself. So I know most folks are aware the Restoration Hardware Gallery, RH Gallery, opened in late September of last year. It's a 60,000 square foot flagship furniture gallery with, frankly, just a spectacular restaurant on the 3rd level. Has gotten a lot of press and a lot of reviews. This was the overflow parking for the movie theater. It had not been built on ever, so that's a nice addition. And then in December, we welcomed Lifetime to the mall. This is a portion of the old J.C. Penney's anchor store, which was a large anchor. So there's the Lifetime Athletic building, 3 levels plus a rooftop. Next to this image, I don't have a picture of this, but there's a second building that's called Lifetime Work, a co-working space, and then Lifetime Sport, which is an indoor soccer training facility for Lifetime members. Other outside groups can rent it. And all of those 3 users, the workspace, the sports space, and the fitness, are connected to the mall with a new winter garden, a large 3-story, tall, enclosed glass winter garden that gets you directly into the mall. In the springtime, the mall's excited to open up 3 new tenants as part of this construction project. Rustica Bakery, Yumi Sushi, and Dry Bar are those 3 tenants. And so, again, another accomplishment over at Southdale.
Are they in the mall or in the Lifetime?
They're
Fitness?
technically underneath the Lifetime workspace. So if you drive up to the main entrance by the Macy's, where the Qdoba and the Smashburger are, that drop-off area, they've extended those outdoor uses. So these 3 tenants have a door that opens directly to the exterior, and then I think 1 or 2 has a door that goes into the mall as well. I don't think all 3 of them do. So. Another project to give an update on, and I think this is, I gave a similar update last month, but in 2019, the HRA did a lot of work with the developer trying to get something good going at that 7200 block of France Avenue. As I mentioned earlier, sad to report, despite the hard work and the efforts and the zoning and the tax increment financing, the owner was not able to secure a construction loan for that project. So they're in the midst of retooling, trying to determine what the next steps are. So the building on the 7250 building has a large fence around it that had been deemed structurally unsafe quite some time ago. So it's been cordoned off and blocked off for many months. And then the 7200 building still has 1 or 2 tenants in there. That's the building on the right. So we'll see if that one revives in some different fashion in the future. But the proposal that we had worked on, which I think was the 4th or 5th proposal for that site, does not appear to be moving forward. And then shifting to affordable housing, happy to report we've made some strong progress on our goals of having not just luxury housing in Edina, but also more affordably priced housing. Stephanie Hawkinson reminded me that in the affordable housing realm, some of our goals are to protect the tenants, the folks that live in the homes, to preserve existing affordable housing, and then to produce new housing. So one of our success stories from 2019 is the preservation of a property on Sandell, 70th and Sandell. A smaller property had been owned by a family for a long time. It was time for the family to sell it, and the HRA worked with Aon to purchase it and keep it affordable, as opposed to turning it over into market rate units. So the HRA did provide a grant to Aon to keep it permanently affordable. And then on the production side, again, nothing new here, but just to remind folks that we've all been working hard and are going to see some results in the upcoming future. The 4100 76th Street property, this is the project that will be built by Aon. The HRA in 2019 purchased the property to hold it temporarily. Aon received a pledge of tax credits last year, so they are working on their final aspects of funding, and that should be moving forward in 2020 or 2021 with construction on that site. And then a second one is the old Waldorf Nevins Cleaners at 70th and Amundsen. The HRA will also purchase and hold this site temporarily. We have a contract with MWF Properties to build 62 units of affordable workforce housing. They have their financing in place, and I think we're going to see construction in 2020. So that's another nice win to have behind us. And then one of the other projects we're working on for the future is at 4040 West 70th. This property was on the open market. Most interest came from residential developers who wanted to build market rate housing. The Edina Housing Foundation asked the HRA to get involved in purchasing that so that we could construct age-restricted affordable housing on that property. So we're in the midst of purchase contracts and finishing up those details, but we think we'll see some activity on that site in 2020. Probably not construction. We still have to do zoning and architects and find the developer, but I think that would be another good project to keep our eyes on in future years as well.
If you stay with that slide, Bill, if you go over to France Avenue there, we have the vitamin shop. The building to the north has been scraped, and there's a new building being constructed there. Do you have a photo of that building?
You know, I do not. The HRA has not been involved in that one, but you're correct. It's the older two-story office building was scraped last year. There's a 10,000 square foot retail center that's being constructed on the property. They've got some strong leases with some furniture providers. The latest information I have is that they have one tenant space available that's remaining, and the rest of it is leased. But I don't have any images of that one.
Any knowledge on the timing of when that would be completed?
I don't have a completion date. I know they've got their underground work in place, the site's scraped, but I don't have an actual delivery date. It should be fairly simple, so I would guess by the end of 2020. They normally try to hit them and get them open before the holidays. That might be aggressive depending on their level of build out, but I would expect to see substantial construction there in 2020. I can dig around and bring some more information back as well. And then one of the tools that the HRA has been working on for many years, including in 2019, is the use of tax increment to help fund some of these affordable housing developments. So we've talked a lot about the Southdale 2 tax increment district. We've worked with our state legislators for several years to try to have that TIF district work as best as it can for the community. We've tried to get clearer on how much monies are available and for what purpose. So this is the same image that was in the packet. But we hired Ehlers Associates to dig into it. With tax increment financing, I know I say this a lot, but it's oftentimes very complicated to come up with a really simple answer because TIF is not simple. I wish it were. But this pie chart essentially shows the amount of monies that we are projecting to be available when this TIF district closes in a couple years. So starting in the lower right, there'll be about at least $6.1 million to pay off the initial obligations, to pay off the loan to the Simon, to pay off the interest on the loan. And then state law allows TIF monies to be pooled to eligible projects either within the district or outside the district. So in the upper left, kind of the yellowish color on my screen, about 7.8 million would be available to pool to other housing projects, and that's affordable housing projects. The city also receives special legislative authority to pool more than is typically allowed. So that's the gray box in the lower left. That's another 7.4 million that is projected to be available that could also be directed towards new affordable housing. And then in the upper right corner, even with those investments in the new housing and paying off the obligations, we're still projecting that there's about $7.5 million of excess increment that we don't have authority to spend. The state legislators have made it very clear that they've given us the greatest flexibility that they're going to. So based on the numbers we have at the end of 2019, we're looking at returning about 7.5 million to the city, to the schools, and to the county. These numbers will change. Every year is a little bit different, but based on the information we have today, we're using these numbers in our budgets as we work to make investments in affordably priced housing predominantly. So hopefully that's a little bit clearer way to explain it. And then finally, one of the major projects we've been working on for quite some time is the Pentagon Park, the Pentagon Village. 2019 was the year that we saw a great deal of progress, and we'll see more and more in the next couple years. This is an image from a few weeks ago of the new retail that's being constructed on the site. I admit this is a really ugly picture, but let me tell you what we're looking at here in the dust and ice. So on the left, you've got the new monument signage that will go throughout the property. In the background, you've got the first new retail building. In the foreground, you've got the footprint of the second retail building. They've got some really exciting new businesses that are leased to move in there. So those should open up this summer. We're excited to see that. And then in the background, believe it or not, this mess of construction equipment is parked on top of a 1-acre public park. I'm sorry, not a park, but a public plaza space. It's maintained by the developer. It's not a city park. But it is open to the public. The developer commissioned custom artwork to be installed there. They got their trees planted before winter came. That will be a nice space. In the far background is a new parking structure that's constructed. And then on the left are 2 pads for hotels that are expected to break ground in the springtime. So in 2019, the city did issue 3 TIF notes to the developer. One of the largest expenses on the site was the construction of structured parking, as well as redoing every single utility on the property, rebuilding every road, every pipe, every connection. So this is the first phase of the parking structure. It is designed to be expanded vertically, so as their office tenants get secured, they can go up with more parking. This is a closer-up photo of the retail. That's the first retail that's coming in. So we just expect a lot. We're excited to see the activity in 2019. We'll be even more excited to see finished buildings in 2020 and 2021. So that's where we've been in 19. I also wanted to include a brief forecast of where we expect to be going in 2020, and some of the projects we'll be working on. These are in various staff work plans. But we'll have another conversation about the old public works site. We expect to see the Lorient at 45th and France finished. We'll see all the landscaping in Nolan Mains and all the final details finished there in springtime. We'll probably do a study of the 44th and France neighborhood node. This was a recommendation in the small area plan to start having conversations with commercial property owners there and see if there's interest and ability to work together on shared goals. Improve parking, stormwater runoff, and improve public space. Not sure if that'll translate to any real project, but we want to get the conversation started. That was what was recommended in the small area plan. We'll also look at the Highway 100 Business Park and look at what we might need to do or want to do to make that a better place to do business. We're keeping our eyes on two other properties, 6600 to 6800 France Avenue. The Edina Realty, Evereve Buildings, Tavern on France. The developer is trying to put together an updated plan there on that site, and there might be some HRA involvement. We'll see where that leads. And then also the U.S. Bank site at 70th in France. Not sure if HRA involvement will be necessary there, but the developer has some pretty ambitious plans. They intend to meet many of the goals in our Southdale guide, and that usually means when there's a lot of public benefit, there's usually a cost that the public sometimes gets involved with. So we're keeping our eyes on that one. And then on the affordable housing side, the 66 West TIF district, that project finished a few years ago, but we'll keep our eye on that TIF district. We're not sure if it's worth keeping that TIF district open or if it's time to close it. So we'll do a study of that in 2020 and learn more. And then again, excited to see some construction progress on Amundsen on 76th Street, and we'll see where we go with 70th Street and see how that project shapes out. That could be 20 or 21. So those are the highlights of the report. I'm also available for any questions. Stephanie Hawkinson is here as well if you have any questions on the housing projects.
The Millennium you didn't talk about.
Yep, the Millennium on 66th. Phase 1 is under construction now. So they've got their underground work in. Obviously this old building's been demoed. The site's been cleared. The foundations are in. Big crane is there to build the building. That has about 240 or so units. Mostly market rate. There are some affordable units that will be installed there. But that's one of the projects that was approved just prior to the cities adopting a more firm affordable housing policy. So they voluntarily contributed some, but it's not the full 10 or 20%. That should be finished spring, summer of 2021.
That sounds about right. Yeah. Member Brindle. Commissioner Brindle.
So at the end of your list, you have land trust, which you have not, I don't think, unless I missed it, I don't think you talked about it. So why is that on your list and what's going on?
That is a great question for Stephanie Hawkinson.
Commissioners, excuse me. We're just going to continue working and exploring on how to expand the land trust program. It is challenging in the city, as you've heard, just because our property values are so high. And with the property taxes being based on the housing values, future long-term ability for residents to remain in their home is challenging, but we're looking at all that and seeing how we can still expand the program. We're only producing about one home a year, and so I'm working with the Land Trust on different options.
Yes. Commissioner Staunton.
Mr. Neuendorf, on the forecasting of 2020 activities, the fourth bullet talks about investigate redevelopment potential of 44th and France commercial node. I assume that Are there any specific sites, or is it that conversation that you were talking about that really is at issue there?
Yeah, great question. It's starting the conversation. At this point, there's no specific project, there's no specific site. Right now at that intersection, obviously the Lorient is under construction. I understand that the old Linhoff Photo Shop has a new tenant that should be moving in this spring. I forgot the address, but the building on the corner where the Riveter co-working space is, they initially had some concepts to do a daycare on the site. It sounds like that is not going to move forward in the Dura building, correct? So that other than those projects, which we all know of, I don't know of anything else to focus on.
And then I assume your reference to it as a commercial node, I heard you refer to it as a neighborhood node, and your referral, we got a question from folks about whether there's been some policy change from the small area plan from neighborhood node to commercial node. I assume you're just using those interchangeably, and it's not some policy change to calling it a commercial node versus a neighborhood node.
Yep, you're exactly correct. The zoning classification is a neighborhood node. When the commercial brokers look at it, it's a commercial space to them. They rent commercial restaurants and shops and whatnot. So the small area plan actually uses both terms almost interchangeably.
Okay.
But yeah, this area was officially designated as a neighborhood node, and that has not changed.
And then you mentioned the Durr building. Is that project not moving forward, or what's the status on that, if you know?
Yeah, my understanding is that proposal for a daycare on the site is not moving forward.
Okay. Thank you.
On that same location, I heard last night at a school-related event that a rumor that the convention grill might be for sale. And of course, I think John Romarchik, who owns the convention grill, excuse me, also owns that land behind the convention grill that we've talked about from time to time as a location for district parking. And I'm wondering if you might check that out as well to see if there's any truth to that rumor and whether this might be an opportunity for us to look at, as we look at that neighborhood node, whether this is an opportunity here for us to think about that district parking.
I had not heard that rumor, but we'll definitely look into it.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. A question. Is there any more information at 7200 France? It's just so curious to me that there was a pretty good plan developed there. I know those guys spent a ton of time on it, and yet they couldn't secure their financing. Do you have any more insight on that?
No.
Okay.
No, unfortunately we don't. The developer is not very responsive at this point, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people worked really hard and spent a lot of money on that site over the years. But yeah, this last plan that finally got approval, things were looking bright in the summer with their equity investors, and then as they went in for financing, they decided to go for HUD financing, which is more paperwork, more time, but better rates. And then conventional financing was the backup, but it sounded like neither of those options worked out. So I don't have any other further detail than the basics.
So do we have the right, maybe Mr. Teague has an opinion on this too, do we have the right to ask for the area market study as the applicant goes forward? Or do we do that routinely? I'm not aware of it if we do.
So for this project in particular, in our TIF agreement, that was one of the conditions to move forward with actually providing TIF money was to see their market analysis and their market study. They have not delivered that to us. Mm-hmm. At this point, we can ask for it, but they're already in default of their TIF contract, so I don't expect them to give it to us.
I think on that site at this time, it'd be an academic pursuit, so we wouldn't be very well informed. However, I do think that when we consider these projects, and especially one of that nature, it's large and imposing. There was an earlier project that didn't come to fruition on Pentagon North, which could have really opened that site up had they been able to come to an agreement. And I just wonder, we've got this Maxfield Research Housing Needs Analysis coming forward at some point soon. And it just seems as if there would be, if we required the area market study from a developer, no responsible developer would come into a relatively large project without a very concise area market study. And if we had that in hand with an overlay against the housing needs analysis, it could create a better informed decision down the road. And you just hate to see this much time and money and angst that goes into a project of that nature, and you finally come through and say, here we are, and yet we're not. And it just seems as if had that maybe, and I don't know without seeing the results of that, if it's simply financing or if the project was too aggressive for the site, and that's why the financing arms wouldn't agree to it. And so those are questions. And again, I just want to throw that out as a possibility into the future to, again, be better informed.
Yeah, thanks. So my understanding, and Carrie can correct me if I'm off, but when it comes to zoning, I don't believe the city has rights to demand that they give that to us. We can ask, and they can say yes or no at their pleasure. But when they work with the HRA for funding, and they want us to be an investor, we have every right to demand that they turn it to us. So that's why when the HRA is involved, we can be a little bit more aggressive and get, peek under a tent a little bit more. Yes. And for all the projects that we're currently working on, the developers have been very open to the point of being uncomfortable. They don't like being open with all their numbers and all that. But again, if the HRA gets involved with TIF or any other tool, we demand to see those numbers. So that, as I mentioned, for the 7,200, that was one of the criteria that they had to give us. That's one of several things that they've defaulted on. So,
okay, thank you.
Good. Any other questions for Manager Newendorf? Yes.
I just want to,
Commissioner Fisher.
I just want to make a clarification, just because I think sometimes these conversations can be misconstrued. I'm going to go back to 44th and France neighborhood mode. What I heard you say initially is our focus, the public focus there, it's not, because we were talking about development, and it kind of comes across as though we're out there trying to encourage, get involved in private development. That is not the case. What I heard you say is we're getting involved to see if we can find common ground to create shared parking, which ultimately will help private development and the neighborhood, but that's the role of the public, to kind of bring private owners together for the common good. And I just want to be very clear about that, because I think it could be misconstrued that we're in there trying to meddle in private development.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that clarification. The small area plan identifies 3 or 4 goals regarding economic vitality, and one of the biggest goals there is to have the property owners work together if there's will and if there's a way. So we wanted to start a conversation and see if there is a way to work together on shared parking. That's usually the biggest angst in that area, is shared parking, and then the impacts on traffic if parking is bad. So we wanted to start the conversation. It might be a very short conversation, but if the owners have something to work together on, we'd be happy to bring the parties together if we can and help out. But you're correct, there's no intention for the city to, instigate new development there.
Any other questions or comments related to this? You're in review. Thank you for that update. And maybe you could make that PowerPoint presentation available to everybody?
Sure, yes, we'll get it uploaded to Novus. Happy to do that.
Thank you. All right, any correspondence that's come in? In our agenda it says none. I assume that there hasn't been anything that's come in? Okay. And then commissioner comments? Anyone have any commissioner comments? Otherwise we'll move to the... Yes.
So I was, just a short little story here. I was talking with Mr. Neal yesterday because I was out of town and I had to get back late last night, and the weather wasn't great in northern Minnesota. So I was being a planner. I said, just in case the weather's bad, I'm curious, how's Commissioner Staunton doing? Is he going to be there? And obviously I'd looked at the agenda and it was light. And Mr. Neal said, I would consider this a meeting that's not worth losing a car or a life over. And I thought, well, that's great. So, I'm going to do my best to get there. But I was driving back last night, and something occurred to me. So, by definition, are you saying there are meetings that are worth losing a car or a life over?
I am. And I think I told you I'd tell you if this was the case, right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Anyway, I have a whole new measuring system now for meetings. So, anyway, thanks.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Any other commissioner comments? No more executive director or manager Neil stories? All right. Okay.
Not for me.
All right. Executive Director Neil has some comment on the HRI bylaws.
Well, Your Honor, the bylaws require staff and HRA commissioners, if you're of a mind to give some thought to amendments to the proposed or to the bylaws on an annual basis. Staff have reviewed the bylaws. We don't see anything that's necessary to amend, and so we'd recommend that we not amend them this year.
All right.
So, no action required.
Yeah, they weren't part of the presentation, but it might be good to circulate them.
Sure.
So folks can look at them after the fact and see whether they have any ideas. All right. That prompt anything from other commissioners? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So.
Is there a second? Discussion? All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. 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 Opposed? Carried. We're adjourned.